Hello, and welcome to Sideways. This is quite a climb this morning. I'm a bit out of breath. I was just thinking, has anyone ever said to you, or have you ever described yourself to someone else as a bit OCD? Or if you've had a difficult relationship with drink, or even if you haven't, have you ever heard anyone say he or she is a bit of an alcoholic? Well, today we're going to be talking about why you can't be a bit OCD and you can't be a bit of an alcoholic, and the reasons that perhaps people get confused with what might be obsessive or anxious behaviour and diagnosable mental health or other conditions. In addition to that, we're talking about why I've been sleepy all week, and we also have a conversation about the merits of starting and sustaining your recovery on TikTok. I'll have to go now because Daisy's just rolled in some fox shit. Are you OCD? Morning.
Good morning. How's things your end?
All right. I've just been watching a guy on TikTok who's he's opened his TikTok account as he started his journey into sobriety. He's a recovering alcoholic.
Oh, right, okay.
He's called, what's he called? The Man with the Hat. Which is a bit like you a few weeks ago.
It's interesting.
It is quite interesting, but he's just doing a live Q&A that I was watching, which was quite interesting because there's a kind of boundary, isn't there, between talking to people about how you maintain your own recovery and then finding yourself in a position where people are asking you for advice. And, you know, there were a couple of questions he was trying to answer. And I'm thinking, you don't know how to answer this, do you? And I was kind of caught in this sort of strange hinterland between, you know, admiration for what he's doing and the way that he's doing it, and slight concern that, you know, you can perhaps overreach yourself and the pressure that might put on you.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's it's similar to the way we set up our meetings. You know, we have a certain level of term of sobriety that you need to reach before you can co-facilitate a meeting. It's normally after you've done 3 months of sobriety, you can help to co-facilitate a meeting. And then when you've done 6 months of sobriety, then you can start to run meetings. But it's we have to be careful. That's not set in rock, because some people are more able to do that than others, and some people are more willing to do that than others. And you have to be careful, because we have had situations where people do start to facilitate meetings, and exactly as you say, they find it a little bit stressful and it can have an adverse effect on their own sobriety. So we have to be careful.
Anyway, so the upshot is I'm keeping an eye on him, but we should probably do something on TikTok.
Okay, yeah, okay.
We need to do some little 1-minute videos. We'll have to have a think about that, because that'd be quite... what would be quite amusing would be if we put some on there and nobody looked at them at all. That'd be hilarious.
That would. It would be a bit. I'll tell you what. It would reflect the UK's performance in the Eurovision Song Contest last night, where they got nil points.
Nil point. Why do we still enter that?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. I mean, I was going to put it on my gratitude list. That I was so pleased that I didn't bother to watch it. But I did. I watched it. I looked at the end to watch the results come in, because it's just that's the only bit that I find of anything.
That is quite boring though, because that goes on for about an hour and a half. The results, it's ridiculous. Isn't it? It's like the World Cup draw.
It's a show that just gets strung out way too long, and it's full of absolutely terrible music and terrible presenting, and it's just awful. It really is. And so I'd never actually watch it. I gave up that a long time ago. But I just, out of interest, when you texted and said, "Are you watching it?" Which I wasn't, but I thought I will look towards the end just to see how badly we do, and we got 0 points. We was the worst country.
Yeah, I didn't watch any of it at all, but I was listening to something on the radio yesterday when they were talking about Eurovision, and I either didn't realise this or I'd forgotten it, but when ABBA won it with Waterloo in whatever it was, 1973, I can't remember what year it was.
74, I think. But you might be right.
Well, whichever it was. Apparently, the UK jury gave them nil points.
Did they?
Yeah.
That's
one of the biggest pop bands of all time.
Yeah. It just goes to show it's just a nonsense. But there we go. I don't want to go on about that anymore.
I might enter next year.
You can't do worse, can you? You can't do worse than 0 and coming last.
Well, I could do worse because I could not. You could not not be selected as the UK representation. I mean, that is just about the lowest of the low, isn't it?
Yeah. You don't even get put forward to getting nil points.
You're not good enough to be worst in a European song competition.
Oh well, yeah. Anyway, we're tripping on a bit here.
Well, you are.
Well, yeah. Well, I think you joined in very well. You drove that conversation. But anyway,
what do you want to talk about then?
Well, this is episode 26. It's the last episode of season 3.
Oh, does that mean we have a big long summer break now?
No, not really. We've got too many things to talk about, haven't we? We've got too many ideas. I've got a long list that sits on my desk here of all the different ideas that we keep coming up with.
That's 78 episodes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean,
you thought it was 100 a couple of weeks ago, which was quite funny.
I got confused with how many seasons we'd done. I quickly looked at my spreadsheet and put myself in order on that one.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's episode 26. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've done. I mean, the last 2 seasons have been almost entirely done on Zoom, haven't they? And in lockdown.
I have, yeah. So this is a season finale. I expect you've got something amazing lined up, have you?
Well, not really. No. It's the worst one we've ever done. So, we'll let other people be the judge of that. But I'm hoping it's not going to be a straight representation of the UK's performance last night.
Yeah, but disappointing.
Before we start, it's interesting to hear what Prince Harry has been saying about his use of drink and drugs to change the way he felt, which is directly linked, as far as he's concerned, to his mother's death. And I know you suggested sending him the link to one of our episodes called Dealing with Grief, which I thought it would be very helpful for me. I'm sure he'd like to listen to, which, as you know, was season 2, episode 6. You know that off the top of your head, obviously.
Definitely. As you know, I keep a spreadsheet and it's always at my fingertips.
I mean, actually, that was one of our most listened to episodes, wasn't it, that one?
I think it was. I haven't checked recently, but certainly for a long time it was right up there, yeah. Although, of course, the most popular one is the first ones, because a lot of people listen to that one and think, nah, I don't think so.
Not for me. That's rubbish. But what I thought was interesting also that Prince Charles had previously sent him to a rehab centre for a day, which I'd forgotten about, even if I knew at the time.
I didn't even know that. For a day? For a day?
Yeah. Yeah, well,
what's he doing? Opening the canteen or something?
well, he just went there and said, "Have a look around at this," because he'd caught Harry having a bit of a cheeky bifter on the Highgrove estate, hadn't he?
Yeah, but everyone's done that, haven't they?
They have.
You don't get sent to rehab for a day for skinning up on a Blodwyn Pig album, do you?
Well, I expect he had his butler to do it for him, don't you? Yes. Or he just bought him his bong on a silver platter, didn't he? So there you are, Your Majesty.
You're being classist now.
Well, I'm almost glamorising it, which is obviously a no-no. But I can't imagine that would have done any good. It was supposed to have given it, frightened him. I know. When my dad caught me smoking ciggies, he said he's going to send me to look around the hospital at the cancer ward. But it wouldn't have frightened me any more than it frightened me watching my poor old Uncle Jeff die in agony from alcoholism. It doesn't make any difference.
No, I mean, we know that, don't we? That actually seeing other people suffering from whatever it is that we're stuck to makes absolutely zero difference. Doesn't matter whether it's drink or drugs or smoking or whatever it is. It's. You'd think that it would be quite powerful, but it isn't at all.
It just isn't, no. But anyway, that's prior to what I wanted to talk about, really. It was not. I want to talk about compulsive behaviour.
Oh, okay.
But I think, there's the distinction between an addiction and a compulsion can sometimes be a little bit unclear.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting. I must admit, I never considered. The typical comparison that people make is the one between OCD and anxiety.
But I think both are associated with receiving stress and anxiety, aren't they, in some ways?
Yeah, they are. I mean, the thing about OCD, and obviously there is an obsessive and a compulsive part of it. But I'd say the obsessive part certainly is fundamentally different in a disorder like OCD, because the obsession quite often is completely irrational. And actually, when you think about something like an addiction, although obviously the obsession starts to control your life, there's a kind of clear line of sight between the obsession and the behavior that results. I've got to have a drink, and you part of your need to have that drink is because you have developed a physical dependency on that drink.
Yeah.
Whereas with something like OCD, your obsession sometimes, quite often, is just your own thoughts. Your mind is so busy, so active with sometimes incredibly distressing thinking, that your obsession becomes about not being able to break out of that loop of your thinking, or doing some sort of behavior that gives you some sense of relief from that.
We've often discussed before about the disease model of addiction and compulsion and the use of various methods to deal with it. But going back to that point regarding, the use of that term OCD. Mm-hmm. I've come across it a lot. People throw it. It's the same as they do the term alcoholic. It's used to describe someone who's had a few too many drinks sometimes, and it doesn't reflect in any way what's going on with that person, because alcoholism is a chronic disease, as is OCD. OCD is a chronic mental health condition. And when people use it flippantly, I remember someone in groups was saying, I've got this, I'm very OCD about the money in my wallet. So you'd have all the £20 notes or whatever lined up, so they're all facing the same way. That's not the same. That's not the same, is it? As someone with proper OCDs it's debilitating. People can't leave the house.
Absolutely,
it's awful.
Yeah, I mean, there is, certainly one of the things that is the same about something like alcoholism and OCD is you can't be a bit of either of them. You're either an alcoholic or you're not. You're either OCD or you're not. That's that. There's no great gradient of it. So I think, with that example, it's quite, the reason I was laughing about that is because I can remember showing my children once the money that I had in my wallet. It was all over the place, and some of the notes were folded, some of them were upside down. It was a total shambles. It didn't bother me, as you can imagine, sort of thing that will wind you up, massively wound my children up, and they made me take it out and put it all in order and put it back again. That isn't OCD, and the reason it isn't OCD is because that is not having a negative impact on your life. It might be a little bit uncomfortable to look at it. It's like a record out of its sleeve. Yeah, which I know is upsetting for you, but it's not debilitating you to such an extent that you can't lead a normal existence. Something that we probably, many of us will have had experience of doing is leaving the house and then thinking, oh, did I lock the door? Yeah. And you kind of go back and you check it, or the car, or whatever it might be. If you go back and check that you've locked the door, which I do, I must admit, that isn't OCD. That's just, that's a little bit of anxiety. If you have to do it 10 times to be sure, and after the second time for sure that you have locked it, but you still have to carry on the next date, that is a completely different situation, because actually you're doing something to abate your anxiety, but actually the doing of it is creating anxiety from the kind of shame and the way that it is negatively impacting your life. So there's a massive difference between those little things that we do that are in some way designed to help us manage anxiety, and when you get to the point where you've got a diagnosable condition like OCD. Yeah,
it's strange that going back to the lock of the door, which I've done the same with my car as well, which I'm sure you have. Yep. I think there's a certain distance you can get from either your house or your door where you're just going to live with the anxiety of it anyway. You get so far that I'm not going back now. I'm sure I did, and you convince yourself that it's all okay.
Yeah, or you worry that I don't know, you left the iron on or something.
Yeah, but I've never gone back to my house and found it unlocked, or my car. No, it's strange, but yeah, you do it once. You don't keep doing it. And I looked at some programs and watched some bits on YouTube. And there's some truly shocking things about with people that do have proper OCDs. We're talking about people can't leave the house because they constantly need to check the lights are off. Or, you mentioned the stove and appliances in the house where they have to unplug them. Can't leave them plugged in, and then they go back and keep checking. They check the plugs out. And it reminds me a little bit. There's a guy that did come to groups, which I know a lot of people come into addiction do have these compulsive disorders as well, but not as often as not very often when they get to the point where that is the main problem in their life. Is obviously the addiction side of things, which is causing real problems. But he had to keep measuring his walls in his house, because he felt like they were moving and closing in. He would take pictures to make sure he'd have a reference point, then he'd measure them, and he'd keep doing it. And it was causing him real angst, and he wouldn't leave the house in case the walls moved. And that became a real issue for him.
Yeah, well, that actually is quite a nice example of the difference between something that is a behaviour that's born out of anxiety and something that is a behaviour that might be born out of a condition like OCD, because there's something it's almost like a magical irrationality about it.
It was terrifying for him, certainly, and it certainly led to his use of drink and drugs, because he could release the stress and anxiety while taking some, Class A, he's taking quite hard drugs, which was his main issue, rather than drinking. But that would give him a moment's peace in his mind from this horrible anxiety that was going on. I think it does prove that link between, mental health issues, producing the environment in which an addiction will thrive, and the other way around, as we've talked about before. Yeah,
definitely. I think the pandemic has been the cause of a lot more of this kind of lazy use of the term OCD, because when it all began, people were talking about becoming OCD about washing their hands. And if you're not OCD about washing your hands, you should be OCD about washing your hands. Well, that's ridiculous, because it's a complete misnomer, because the suggestion in that is you should get a mental health disorder in order to keep yourself safe in a pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, but those disorders, I mean, I think the interesting point you touched on there about, because one of the common ones that hits the headlines is people that are overly worried about germs. We've got the Howard Hughes situation, and apparently Michael Jackson had a very similar thing as well, where everything that has to be taken into account in every move that they make, and it becomes an absolute obsession. And again, it can have a debilitating effect on their lifestyle. But again, when I was looking up some of these issues, I was watching this clip where some guy he was looking to buy a house, and he was so concerned with the numbers. He'd only look at houses with a certain number that he considered a lucky number. He wouldn't go and look at a house that was numbered different in the street. So you can imagine how limited his scope was finding a house for sale in his area of that number. Mm-hmm. And it took months and months and months to be able to find something. And when he eventually did find the house, he didn't really like it.
At least it had the right number.
It had the right number, so it fitted that, but it wasn't suitable for him.
He probably kept moving house until he found one that was the right number that he liked. But as you say, I mean, it's a good example of how narrow we potentially can make our lives through a debilitating condition like OCD. Actually, the thing about illness is also quite a good way of illustrating the difference between what might be a kind of generalized anxiety disorder and what might be OCD. Because if you take something like a fear of sickness, emetophobia, then the way that a lot of people would deal with that would be they would be avoidant. So if someone's ill around them, in the workplace or at school or whatever it might be, they will probably work very hard to stay away from that person. So they might even say, well, I'm going to take a day off work because I don't want to get sick. So it might appear like a kind of overreaction, but their prime concern is about avoiding that risk. Whereas someone who's got OCD is more likely to be frantically washing their hands all the time, not necessarily avoidant, but they will be, even if they are avoidant, they will be going over and above. They'll be doing something that seems incredibly excessive to avoid the possibility that they might get ill. So they won't just wash their hands once. They'll, have a shower, then they'll wash their hands 10 times. And then as soon as they've done something, they'll do it again. And if you think about the sort of impact that would potentially have on your life, it's significant.
Yeah, I think there's also, again, the flippant use of the term OCD. It came up when I was, do you remember a film Jack Nicholson was in it? It was called As Good as It Gets. I don't know if you ever remember seeing it. It's a fantastic film. It's a great film.
I remember the film, but I didn't watch it. It was too popular.
well, in the reviews, they're saying that the character he plays, Melvin, has got OCDs. And the way that played out in the film, that when he walked along the road, he would avoid stepping on the cracks. I remember doing that as a kid, didn't you? It was a bit of fun, wasn't it? Because so there's snakes down there and that sort of thing. And he would always eat breakfast at the same table in the same restaurant every day. That was the crux of the film, where he met this girl, etc. But anyway, but they used the terms OCDs there, and to me, that's not debilitating. That's not a chronic condition. Perhaps it's just a mild obsession, or even being happy with a structure.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting one, because I think with something like that, I mean, I'm thinking of clients that I've worked with who've behaved in similar ways. And, my thought would then be, okay, this could be indicative of OCD. I think you're right. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's OCD. But for instance, I mean, there's quite a fine line there, isn't there? If you are intent upon avoiding walking on cracks in the pavement, it will get to the point where there might be certain routes that you avoid taking because you can't avoid them. That's beginning now to affect your life. I can think of someone I work with who did that, and also, apart from avoiding the cracks in the pavement, they would also count their steps. So it was like they were layering up the sort of obsessive behaviours. That is now straying into the area of, okay, now this is having a negative impact on your life. It's making it difficult for you to function properly. And I think then you are kind of getting to the point where, there are questions about whether that is then a diagnosable condition. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll come on to the treatment of that in a minute and how you deal with that. But also there's a distinction I think needs to be drawn between like a passionate hobby, isn't there, and compulsive behaviour. For example, if people get up and run 10 miles every day, if it's rain, snow, sunshine, or whatever, they do that religiously every day because they're training for a marathon or a half marathon or whatever. I mean, is that an addiction or an obsession, or is that just good sort of athletic discipline?
I think it's all right, isn't it? Again, I go back to the how is that impacting your life? If you get up every morning and you run 10K and that's making you feel good about your life and you're happy, then there's nothing wrong with it, is there? You've got into. I think we all have rhythms and routines. I mean, we've talked about this. Yeah. I'm like that. I'm quite rigid in my habits and routines. Yeah. But it doesn't negatively impact my life. In fact, I would argue it does quite the reverse. It makes me feel comfortable and familiar with what I'm doing, and that's the way I like to live. So I don't think I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all.
No, I don't either. But it's but I think that from what you mentioned there, having your own routine, etc. That's having the correct balance, which is right for you, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's not overly skewed in one direction. Are there such things as good addictions? Because people have said that in the past. And I think that's a sort of almost like an oxymoron.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is an oxymoron. So going back to your example of someone getting up and running 10K every morning, that's a habit, isn't it? It's not an addiction.
Yeah. No, exactly. No, exactly. I think that the emphasis on that would have been the reason that came up in the research. There was a discussion point is that someone would do it regardless of the weather or regardless of the way they felt.
Yeah, but
they'd still do it.
But I take the dog out every morning, regardless of how I feel or whatever the weather is. It doesn't mean I've got bloody OCD. I mean, that's just
it doesn't.
Ludicrous.
No,
that's about. I agree. There's something there about keeping your life and your life in good order, and secondly, there's something about taking your responsibilities seriously.
Yeah,
I go to work however I feel as well. What's that? An OCD? No. It's just being responsible.
Quite. No. But again, I think it's an important point to discuss. But what I wanted to just move on to really was how you deal with this. And I wanted to talk particularly, and I wonder if you could explain it for us a little bit about CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, and whether that is, because I know that is when you research this, they say this is one of the ways to deal with if you have compulsive behaviour disorders. But it sort of strayed into using that with addictions as well. I just wondered what your thoughts were. Explain how CBT works.
Fundamentally, CBT is about addressing dysfunctional behaviours. So rather than spending a lot of time and effort going into the reasons why you might do certain things or why you might have got to the point where you've got to, it really addresses the destructive and dysfunctional behaviours. So it kind of addresses faulty thinking. So the reason that CBT would tend to be the treatment that was pointed toward would be that it comes from a kind of very practical, logical perspective. It says, right, this habit isn't helping you achieve what you want to achieve. Let's understand what you do want to achieve, and let's see if we can start to change some of your thinking and therefore some of your behaviours so that you can recognise that even when you don't follow some of these compulsive behaviours, the world isn't going to collapse, because that's what people with OCD think. They think if I don't turn the light switch on and off 10 times, something catastrophic is going to happen. And so you have to kind of change that pattern of thinking and therefore that pattern of behaviour so that you can recognise that you can just turn the light switch off once and everything will still be okay. And that's kind of what CBT is attempting to do. So it doesn't necessarily go into all of the background, but it kind of addresses directly the behaviours and gets you to take practical steps to change the things that are limiting you.
So would CBT be useful for people with addiction issues?
Well, I mean, when we've spoken about CBT before, I tend to always say the same thing, which is yes, but not necessarily for everybody.
Okay.
So for instance, obviously with something like addiction, the fundamental problem with addiction is the behaviour. So you've got to change the behaviour. So in that respect, yes, CBT can be very helpful because it is looking at trying to change your thinking and therefore your behaviour. But some people probably will respond more to being able to develop a deeper understanding of why they've got to where they've got to, why they feel the way they do. And it might be that other talking therapies, other kind of modalities, interventions would be more helpful and useful in getting them there. So I'd say CBT can be helpful in addressing addiction, but it's not the only tool in the box. No.
It can be one you can use alongside other methods.
CBT techniques are very useful for some neuroses. So, I mean, it's very useful for anxiety, actually, because when you feel anxious about something, often the object of your anxiety or the thing that you think is going to happen is quite unlikely. But what you're not really doing is you're not really allowing yourself to fully think through what you're afraid of. And therefore, you're not giving the opportunity for your logical and rational mind to balance that out. Because if you don't listen to what you're frightened of in the first place, then all the logic in the world is not going to soothe it because it's kind of still sitting there underground. So I think some CBT techniques are very, very useful I mean, I use them, but I just don't use it exclusively.
I understand that now. That's good. Well, I'm sort of grateful you've cleared that up for me.
It's my pleasure.
I was just trying to do a neat little segue into the next bit about being grateful.
Oh, I didn't even notice that one.
Oh, hey, see, I slid that one in.
Wow, that's the first time you've done that, and I haven't spotted it.
I know. No, it's subtle, wasn't it?
It was too subtle for me. I don't know what that says. I mean,
no. It's because you were in full flow. I got you in full flow. You were in work mode. You're in full flow, and your mind was whizzing in that direction. So it was at that point I exploited your weakness.
I was obsessed and compulsive about describing CBT. I was a little bit OCD about it, wasn't I?
You were, yeah. You're properly over the top. You need therapy, son. Yeah. So anyway, what about your gratitude list? I touched on it earlier on mine about not wasting time watching the Eurovision Song Contest, but that was a little bit of a flippant remark. But what would you? Is there anything you'd like to put on this week?
Yeah, this week I'm putting on my gratitude list bed.
Okay, cool.
I mean, I like my bed at the best of times, but I've particularly liked it this week because thankfully the only side effect that I experienced from my second COVID vaccine has been abject exhaustion. I've been absolutely knackered all week. And so it doesn't seem to have mattered how much rest I've got. I've still felt absolutely exhausted. So, bed feels like a good place to go at the best of times. But this week it's felt particularly welcome.
Yeah, that's a very good one. But I was just thinking that's the shortest word you could get for on the gratitude list. I think bed. I was trying to think of shorter words. I like is or at. Not really grateful for those.
How about pie?
Yeah, I suppose so. You could have got away with that last week, couldn't you? I was grateful.
You weren't grateful for it last week, were you?
Not trying to describe it. I'd forgotten. I tripped over my words. But I'm grateful not having to read the book, The Joy of Pie, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's quite good. That probably is one. Certainly bed would be one of the shortest words that you could have on the gratitude list.
Yeah. Well, mine one is podcasts.
Nice. Yeah.
And that sounds a little bit self-indulgent, but I think during lockdown, before that, and I know I'd started to listen to podcasts before we started to do them, just so I could get into them. And I love them now, I really do. But there was a particular podcast I listened to this week that I was really grateful to have the opportunity to hear, and that's because it was done by my youngest daughter, Lizzie.
Oh, really?
Yes, she did a podcast with one of her fellow art teachers, and two of their art students. It was a school podcast, but there was the four of them in the room, and it was a delight to listen to. Where they discussed art and they discussed how different things have influenced them and that sort of thing. And it was just lovely to listen to, and I love to hear. It was nice to hear my daughter speaking so eloquently and knowledgeably about her subject, but also the reaction, the warmth she seemed to get between her and the other teacher and the two children in the room as well. It was a delight. So I was really grateful to be able to listen to that.
That's good. So do you have a favourite podcast?
There's one called Sideways that goes out every week, which is just brilliant. And I think it'd probably be right to mention at this point we touched on it last week about the chap that signs in at 3:00 every Thursday.
Yeah.
And then and we mentioned it last week, and this week it wasn't on there at 3:00.
I told you I've been tired.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I'd like to, I think you should publicly say sorry to Aaron, who's one of our biggest fans, and he was unable to listen at 3:00 UK time on Thursday.
Yeah, I'm not going to apologise to him, Aaron. I'm not going to apologise to you because, as we've discussed in the previous episode, I don't believe in apologising things that are not worthy of an apology. But what I will say is, firstly, I'm very grateful that you listen every week, and secondly, you can be assured that even when an episode isn't available at 3, it will be available at some time, because I won't let you down.
Oh, that's good. I'm sure he'd be happy with that.
Good. So, okay. Other than Sideways, you don't have another favourite podcast?
Yeah, Soberful.
Soberful?
Yeah, it's another one which is very good. Again, it's about addiction and stuff. Yeah.
Is it as good as this one?
It's different, and it's strange because sometimes they will our podcasts sort of merge in sort of subject matter. So
really?
I don't try and listen to it and use it as. I don't like it to influence what I'm going to say. Let's put it that way. But it's a good listen, and it's very. So what about yourself then? Have you got other?
I've got a lot of favourite podcasts, but I think my favourite one, if I had to pick one, in the past few years, I'd say that Heavyweight is my favourite podcast because I can't really describe it. If you like podcasts, listen to it from the start. It's great.
Okay.
It's not about boxers, by the way.
I do like that Peter Crouch podcast, the football one, which it does make me laugh.
Yeah, I've never listened to that. Do you know why?
Too popular.
Correct.
Exactly. Yeah, it is good, and there's some great inside knowledge stories on that. And if you like football, it's a cracking listen.
I don't like football.
Well, yes.
Well, I might do. It depends. I'll let you know at about 6:00 tonight.
Well, exactly. Depending on the results, how they go today. No, I agree. We'll discuss that next week.
Do you listen to? Have you ever listened to Tailenders, the loosely cricket-based podcast?
No, I haven't. Oh, I didn't know. I think I listened to one because I think you recommended it to me.
Mm. Good. Well, listen to Heavyweight and Tailenders.
I'll see what I can do.
And Sideways.
Sideways.
Do you listen to episodes? Do you listen to it every week? Do you?
Of course. Yeah. No, I listen to it on a Thursday as well. Before I put it onto Facebook, I like to have a listen through and see which bits you've edited out, because I can't go referencing it in the preamble if it's not on there.
It's funny because the only reason I ask is because I never listen to it after I've edited it.
Oh, don't you?
No, I've never listened to a whole episode.
Have you not?
Is it any good? No. Is it any good?
I'll tell that alcoholic fella, brilliant. The psychotherapist bloke, he doesn't really know what he's talking about, but apart from that, it's a good listen.
Oh, good. I might give it a listen sometime.
Give it a whirl.
Might do.
Anyway, I'll have a quick. I'm going to go on to the Spotify search part of the episode, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Because there was loads of tracks called OCD. There was one by a group called the Lancashire Hot Pots.
They sound like the Barron Knights.
No, they're more like half man, half biscuit, really.
Oh, okay, yeah, fair enough.
They're a bit more. I quite liked the one called OCD, but the reason I'm not putting it on there is because they took the piss out of people that arranged CDs in alphabetical order, and I thought I'm not having that.
I love them. They're my favourite band.
And then that's not an OCD. We've already discovered that throughout this episode.
No, it's not an OCD. It's just ridiculous behaviour.
Exactly. So the one I'm going to put on is there's a group called the Wild Hearts. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're a sort of a rock band from Newcastle.
Yeah, I think I have heard of them.
But they've got one called OCD, and I like the track. It's a really nice track. I've never really listened to the Wild Hearts before, but I recommend them generally, and I recommend that track. So that's what I'm putting on.
Good.
But last week's Spotify search list that I was talking about, and did you listen to the relaxing Tibetan singing bowls track?
I did. Yeah, you kindly sent it to me yesterday. I listened to it and cranked it right up, and it really got my Saturday off to a fiery start. If I hadn't already been having trouble staying awake, that really didn't help.
Well, it's called balance, but I felt very unbalanced after I'd listened to it, I must admit. Anyway, that's
very good.
That's me about done, mate. I don't know about you.
Well, no, that's it for me as well. I'm just seeing that it's raining outside, which is great because I've got my washing out. But
hey,
here we are. Never mind, eh?
Never mind. Don't get obsessive about it. Well, no, it doesn't. No.
I'm not going to. Yeah, when you put your washing out, do you put it out in garment size order?
No, I do tend to pair my socks up and have them together and that because I like to see they're already paired before I take them off and put them away. Yeah, and I'll put them around the right way as well. Yeah, so the heels.
You put them around the right way.
Yeah, well, I have the heels facing the same direction and that sort of thing. Yeah, I do. Doesn't everyone?
Do you make sure that all your garments are, sort of colour coded on the line, like some people have their bookshelves?
I'm not obsessive. I don't. I do like to.
No, you're not obsessive. You just like to have the heels of your socks together,
pointing in the same direction. Yeah, or on the clothes. If they're drying on a clothes horse, then I have the boxes in one section altogether. They're all in the same area. And they're next to each other, all lined up again, all facing the same way. I do that, but that's what everyone does.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
You can cut that out. You can cut that out.
I'm not going to cut that out. I think it's important for people to see what freak you are.
Good work.
All right.
Okay, mate.
See you later.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Sideways was created by Graham Landy and Martin Pankhurst. If you want to read more about our work or sort through the extensive archive of past episodes, just visit grahamlandywellbeing.co.uk/sideways-podcast. You can follow us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram at Sideways Podcast, and you can email us if you have a question or if there's something you'd like us to cover. But most of all, we want to tell you how grateful we are that you come and listen. And we ask that if you've enjoyed what you've heard, that you spread the word. And we'll see you next week.